back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. If you are watching this real time, it's because you are supporting us through Patreon, and we appreciate that. If you're watching it real time on YouTube, it's because you are a YouTube subscriber, and we thank you for that. Both of you guys should also be linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch Prime account. Amazon will pay us, and it costs you nothing. Follow the instructions in the show description below. And if you are doing none of those things because you're a slug, then Sluggo, I need you to follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. You got to follow Shane at Dinfire also, because it's the easiest way to get your questions in here. From Sifted, from Rabolisk. As more publishers are selling games digitally on console and mobile, it seems it's harder to get sales data from independent groups like NPD. Sure is. Does that make your job as an analyst more difficult if you don't have the full picture? What sales numbers, if any, are publicly held publishers required to share with the public? As a matter of fact, I am unlikely to continue subscribing to NPD.
Wow.
And
end of an era.
Yeah, and I say that NPD's doing nothing wrong. Their data is great, and it's useful for what it is, but it's incomplete. And so I find myself on a monthly basis not even opening up the file. I let my associate do all the work. And I host a monthly NPD call, and I go over the data with investors, and NPD allows me to. And I'm not allowed to share it with them in writing, but I can talk through like how many consoles were sold and what games sold. And I've been doing this every month since 2002. And I used to average about 80 investors on a call, with a high, I think I once had 150 or so, and a low of maybe 50 in a normal year, until 2014. And since 2014, as digital's become a bigger and bigger piece of the pie every month, my audience of investors has dwindled. So I literally had 1 month in the last 12 that I had 2 investors on a call. And I think the biggest call I've had is maybe 30. And it used to be minimum 50. So, you know, I'm probably averaging 20. And I realize that I do an NPD call because NPD is an event. And I think more investors are actually just interested in hearing what I have to say and doing an update. So I thought, gosh, I can save $100,000 a year on NPD, which just is profit for my firm. And, you know, why spend it if I'm not getting value? And I can just do a monthly video game call. I write a monthly video game note, so I'll just do my call when my note comes out. Because honestly, nobody cares how many Xboxes sold in the US. And nobody for sure cares about software sales. And one anomaly, which is especially annoying, is in next generation, Xbox software sales, I'm not making this up, they've sold fewer than 1 million units of software, physical software in the US since the Xbox came out. And when I say fewer than 1 million, I haven't added it up. I'd take the under on fewer than 500,000 units. And they've sold something like, 5 or 6 or 7 million consoles. So the attach rate to their consoles is like 10% of console owners have bought one piece of physical software. And it was so bad that when I talked to Ubisoft after their December 2020 earnings, because they had Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I asked them, how did it sell on Xbox? Because I'm not kidding. Xbox software sales in November, December were like 10,000 units. I mean, there were some really low number. Not Valhalla, like total, like double digit thousands, not 100,000 units. And they said, oh, it sold great on the Xbox. And I go, not physical. And the CFO didn't know. He's like, oh, I don't know. And somebody corrected, yep, nope, they were digital. So what's going on is, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, your landing screen is digital Game Pass, everything connected, and all the new games are there to buy digitally. And I think Game Pass subscribers are just buying digitally. And obviously, back in the fall, stores were closed, and if you wanted physical, you had to order it online and have it mailed to you. PlayStation numbers aren't anywhere near that bad. They've been fine. So I think it's Game Pass that's actually driving it. But I not only don't have a great picture on digital sales, Xbox sales from NPD are worthless. Next gen, not old gen. And so the number's so strikingly tiny, I can't extrapolate from it. It means nothing. So if it's 10,000, does that extrapolate to 10 million? If it's 12,000, does that mean 12 million? No, not even close. I can't get there. So when I realized I was losing any ability to forecast, which I say this started in 2016, 17, when digital started to become 30, 40, 50% of sales, and it's gotten worse every year. I just don't, no, I can't use it. So the answer to your question about, I just told you I'm not going to use it. Does it make my job as an analyst more difficult? Fortunately for me, my job is always relative to what my competitors are doing. And with the exception of 3 or 4 of them, they suck. So and when I say they suck, they're so much worse than they were 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, there were 8 analysts covering the sector, and I wasn't one of the better ones, but 4 were really good and 4 were not, and I was one of the 4 who were not. And since then, 8 has grown to 30, and I'm just using the number 4 because I used to be 4. 4 of them are not embarrassing, and the other 25 are. And I'm one of the not embarrassing ones. So there are literally, I would say, grudgingly, maybe 10 of them could talk to an investor and tell them something the investor couldn't figure out on their own, and 20 of them can't. They just add no value at all. So my job has gotten so much easier because my competition is so bad. And when I say that, I mean that I spend most of my time responding to some idiocy that one of these guys says. So fortunately for me, the data services that have emerged are Sensor Tower. Oh my God, do they suck. App Annie. Oh my God, are they terrible. And the funny thing is, Sensor Tower and App Annie have the same data I do, which is ordinal rankings of mobile games. And they hire data scientists who are far more intelligent than me about how to extrapolate, from ordinal rankings. But what they all are missing is they don't have real data from real publishers and developers, and I do. So if I'm talking to a friend at a private mobile company and I say, oh, your XYZ game is ranked number 100, what's its revenues? And they say $200 million a year. I know number 100 is 200 million, and I can extrapolate what number 102 or number 98 do. And the Sensor Tower and App Annie people don't have that data. Nobody tells them anything because everybody knows that they're selling that data. So Sensor Tower, I think, has called Zynga missing the quarter something like 15 consecutive quarters that Zynga's going to have a bad number, and 15 for 15 Zynga's beat numbers for the quarter. So honestly, they're terrible, and my competitors report this stuff dutifully. My competitors do really brilliant things, like one of them put out a consumer survey, and this was before Grand Theft Auto Remaster got delayed, that said there was enough consumer interest in the shooter games coming out, being Battlefield and Call of Duty and Halo, and then he had GTA in there, that all 3 could do okay. And I had investors calling me, and I go, well, you realize that Call of Duty Vanguard is Call of Duty 17 or 18, and Battlefield 5 is like Battlefield 9. I go, do you think that these games haven't come out the same year before? So why don't we just go look at the 2010 data when all 3 came out? I do that, and I'm like, and by the way, when Battlefield doesn't come out, Cyberpunk comes out. There's some other game that comes out. I'm just like, it's my competitor who's only been covering the sector for like a year and a half had no idea that all these games came out in the same year. So I'll just tell an investor, yeah, there's always room for all of them. And they go, well, what's the sales pattern? Oh, well, the one that comes out first tends to preserve most of its share, and the one that comes out last does the least share. But here's value add. Back to Game Pass. 25 million Game Pass members. How many copies of Halo do you think are the most ever sold by Microsoft in a launch quarter? Answer, 8 million. How many of those 25 million Game Pass members are going to play Halo Infinite? All of them. 25 million. What's the overlap of the 25 million that get it for free and the 8 million that would have purchased it when it came out? 7.5 million? So how many copies is Halo going to sell that are cannibalized Call of Duty or Battlefield sales? None. So who cares? But my competitor isn't smart enough to figure that stuff out. So the answer to your question is the data's shitty, and it's much, much worse. And the good news is I can cut through all the crap. And so bad data makes my competitors even stupider. And not having bad data, I'm fine. Like, I have enough knowledge and experience that I can absolutely do this with my eyes closed. What sales numbers, if any, are publicly held publishers required to share with the public? The law says that a corporation must issue an income statement that is ultimately audited and approved under GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. An income statement has a line item called revenue, period. There is no requirement that the company report segment revenue by game. They're not required to. They do, if they do break out their company in segments, then I'll use Activision example. Activision Publishing is Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, that stuff, Tony Hawk. Blizzard is the stuff you know, is World of Warcraft and StarCraft and Diablo, Overwatch. And then King is all the mobile games made by King. They do, in fact, do segment reporting for those three because they report the top line number. So they have to give you their revenue, all their expenses, and their net profit. But that's as far as they have to go. So even within King, they don't have to say Candy Crush did 50% of revenue. You don't know. You don't care. So they're not required to give us anything, and they don't. When they do choose to give it, it's just choice. They used to give us Call of Duty sales, and they would start out giving units, then they went to across 500 million in retail sales, then they went to $1 billion in retail sales. And I remember back in those years, and I've been doing this 20 years, but I remember back in the teens, 20 teens, we would count the number of days it took to get to $1 billion, and then we'd figure out if Black Friday fell within that number of days, because Call of Duty used to always come out between November 4th and November 10th. It would be a November day that was numbered 4 through 10. So it would be like the second Friday of November or something, or the first Friday of November, whatever it was. But it would come out in those days. And sometimes Black Friday was the 22nd, and sometimes it's the 29th. So if Black Friday landed early and Call of Duty launched late, it would actually get there in fewer days. And then the next year, Black Friday was later and Call of Duty was earlier, and it took 22 days. And we would try to figure that stuff out. But now they haven't even done that in a couple of years. So I don't, it's a game. But hardly anybody does it. Like, I can't remember EA ever saying, "Oh, FIFA sold 19 million." They'll say it in an earnings call, but they don't do press releases anymore. So you hardly ever get the data. And then even EA this year, like Battlefield's in their model at 12.5 million units. Okay, I'm going to tell you now, they're never going to tell you how many units it sold. If it sells 15 million, they'll tell you. If it sells 12.4, they won't. So they guided to 12.5 million. They delayed the game. There is a serious risk that the game won't be great. And if it sells under 12.5 million, they're going to be embarrassed. They aren't going to tell us. So is my job easier or harder with no data? I actually told this to one of the companies I cover. I would rather you give us no data, because if we're all left to our own, I'm going to be closer than anybody else. Period. So the answer to your question is, the lack of information causes bad analysts to do really bad work. And I know you did not intend this as a slam on me, but does it make my job more difficult if I don't have a full picture? It makes my job easier. If they tell you what the number is, what's my value add? If they tell me what the numbers are, repeat what they said. That's what most analysts do. They wait for the company to tell them what their earnings number is, and they repeat it. I can figure it out without help. So less data is really good. So, I think that's the answer. Thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Thank you for your patronage on Patreon. And thank you if you're a YouTube subscriber. And thank both of those classes of people and everybody else for linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch Prime account, because that's free and we get paid. and the instructions are in the show description below. If you're doing none of those things, even if you are doing those things, follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. Tell me on Twitter that I guilted you into it, and I'll give you a shout out. I will see you next time. Thanks.